and welcome to Richard Helppie's Common Bridge. I'm your host, Rich Helppie. Today we've got a great guest. We have Westland, Michigan Mayor Bill Wild. He has a great background, and he's right in the thick of things with local governing. Mayor Wild is going to share with us today his view from the mayor's desk. Please register at richardhelppie.com free. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast channel, including Apple, Amazon, Buzzsprout, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And of course, follow us YouTube TV, Richard Helppie, Common Bridge. And of course, we're on Twitter and most of the major uh, social media outlets. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Um, Mr. Wild here has been mayor of Westland, Michigan, and he's going to tell us a lot about what the cities are looking at. And he's got not only a local view, but also he serves as the Michigan ambassador, a member of the Transportation and Communications Committee, a member of the United States Conference of Mayors, and he's president of the Michigan Municipal League. And he's current chairman of the Conference of Western Wayne, current co-chair of the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments Economic Development Task Force, and he's serving his third term on the board of directors for the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. So, Bill, I appreciate with everything you've got going that you're taking a little time. So it's good to see you. How are you today?
It's good to see you too, Rich, and I'm glad to be on your show today. I'm excited to talk a little bit about the life of a mayor here with your listeners today. So I'm glad to be here, and it's nice to see you again.
Great. Bill, let's tell our listeners a little bit about you. What were some of your early days like? Where did you grow up? Uh, what did you do before you entered public service? And maybe a little snapshot. You've got quite the track record in public service as well.
Well, thank you, Rich. So I grew up here in Westland. When I was born, my parents lived in what we call the historic Norwayne district, and after I was born, we moved to the city of Wayne, just south of us, and then moved back to Westland. I've been here ever since. I went through the Wayne Westland School District, and my wife and I both graduated from John Glenn High School. And after high school, I did a couple years of college working towards a business degree, and then I had a chance to go into business. My dad was in the auto recycling business and gave me an opportunity to start up a business in the city of Wayne. And we did that back in 1988.
Wow.
I ended up selling it about 2 years ago. And so I've got 30 years experience as a small business owner, and I came into the mayor's office. Actually, my time here in the city of Westland, I got about 20 years local government experience. I served for 2 years on the planning commission and 6 years on the city council, and I've served the last 14 as Westland's full-time mayor. So, fast forward today, I probably never thought when I was back at John Glenn, Rich, that one day I'd be the mayor of our city. But it's truly been the honor of my lifetime.
Well, I know you're a dedicated and hardworking public servant. Always, you're the citizens of Westland and the citizens of the region foremost on your mind. Frankly, one of the most practical people I know about how to get things done, which is often difficult with the machinery of government, and oftentimes in municipalities just have to react to what the feds and the state governments do. Um, so, Bill, let's dive right into it. We have a long list of things we could talk about: public safety, economic development, the environment, education, broadband. When you roll out in the morning, what's preeminent on your mind as you begin your day serving the city residents of Westland, Michigan's 10th largest city, and of supporting those in the region?
So I tell people every day that Westland we're 85,000 people, we're the 10th largest city. So we're just big enough that something happens every day, and sometimes something happens every night. So a lot of times in the morning, we're spending some time real quick on some things that may have happened overnight. But I've got a great team here at Westland, and my department heads know that we're full speed ahead at any time, and I like to keep them guessing. They have no idea when they come to work what the mayor's going to care about that day, and it may be something I saw on the way to work, and maybe an email I got or something. But so basically, Richard, for the last since March of 2020, the pandemic has taken the forefront, and so I don't think any local government in the country was prepared for what was coming next. But we've managed through that, and we were able to do that, with very little loss in service to our residents. And we've come through that, and now we're trying to make up for any lost time that we had. And we're really working with our local business community to try to help them get back on their feet from this pandemic. So in the world of a mayor, the thing I like about it the best is I may have 14 meetings today, and all 14 meetings may be on totally different topics. But that's what I like. I like to work on a lot of things, and I really enjoy the work.
Well, that's competent executive leadership, and I think you've been providing that. Well, let's start in public health. We spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about the structure of healthcare. We've talked about the holes in public health. We've talked about the lack of good mental health, behavioral health services. And in your long arc of government, is this issue becoming better managed, managed not as well, or just changed and it's equally difficult? Talk to us a little bit about, especially in the pandemic, what did you find that was working and what did you find that wasn't working?
Well, I think early on, it took a while for all the different agencies to really shift into gear, and communication was pretty tough in the beginning. Trying to coordinate at the local level, we depend on the Wayne County Health Department. The county health department, which depends on the state, which depends on the federal government. So in the beginning, there was a lot of chaos there and a lot of mixed messages, but I think coming through this, at least on the health side of it, that I think all of our county health departments are probably this was a wake up call for them, and I think that if they had talent, if they didn't have talent in those positions, the counties felt it pretty quick. So I think that this pandemic was a real wake up call for the county health departments and certainly the state too. Probably in Westland, we don't have a hospital in Westland, so I have to depend on three different health agencies around us, and fortunately, I have good relationships with them, and we leaned on them as well. But probably the one thing that I've seen change the most in my time in office is mental health, and especially here in Michigan, when they closed the mental health hospitals, typically people that were suffering ended up in jails,
Yeah.
and the jails weren't prepared for that. And then during the pandemic, they emptied out the jails. So at the local level, they really kind of a lot of our mental health issues are falling on my police department and my fire department, and so that's an area that definitely needs a lot of work, and we're not there yet. And you have to. That's an area that it affects just about every family in one way or another, and you have to be compassionate about it. And so that's an area that we spend a lot of time on that perhaps early in my term we didn't spend as much time on.
When you think about those public health matters, and I know the dust hasn't quite settled yet, but behavioral health services, things like vaccinations, things like protecting the population. If you were going to, and I know that you do advise both the governor and the county executives and perhaps the president as well. What kind of things do you tell them? Look, here's what we need at the municipal level that perhaps they have the budget and the legal authority to provide.
That is a great question because at the end of the day, we are the front lines,
Hmm.
and if what we were saying, not only as Mayor Westland, but through some of my work as the Conference of Mayors was, in the beginning when there was a scarcity on vaccinations, um, you know, the way that it was set up was that those vaccinations were going to go to the states, and then it was up to the states to distribute them, and they didn't have the wherewithal. So we were saying get the vaccinations to the front line. And we had mayors all across the country that were willing to turn their city halls into vaccination sites and use our firefighters and stuff to do that. So you know, that's where the metal meets the road. And so I think you get caught up in the bureaucracy of trying to, you know, send resources from the federal government to the state government. And what we saw was that, that was politicized. The vaccination distribution became highly partisan, and the effect of that was really felt here on the ground. So, we still have my ice arena in the city of Westland as a vaccination event, and fortunately, the flow of traffic is going down because we're doing a better job of getting people vaccinated that want to be. But that's the thing I probably advocate the most for. My other hats is that get those resources to the cities where the mayors can get it in the road quicker.
Well, that's a great job opening up that hockey rink, and uh, I'm sure you want to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated because I know you're an avid hockey player, and you want to get back on the ice probably in I don't know about 6 or 8 weeks from now, would be my guess. Uh,
Yeah, you're right about that. So I'm hoping we wrap things up and get the ice back in there quick.
Absolutely, good. That sounds like good. So look, that kind of morphs off into public safety, and there's been a national debate about policing and what makes effective policing. And, is the police officer's job well designed? Is it too much job for one person? You're, mental health counselor. One day you're looking for a lost pet, you're at a domestic disturbance, and then at any time you have to shift into warrior mode. Um, and you have a diverse community. What are some of the challenges facing you today in terms of public safety, and particularly in the police department?
Well, it's definitely changing, and Westland's trying to be a leader in that area as we not only in our community but, as you said, Richard, nationwide. Our country's reimagining what police work looks like, and the difficult part with that is several areas are difficult. Number one is the community expects you and wants and deserves that you uh, hire a public safety force that's reflective of the community, and that's extremely challenging because this is a field that fewer and fewer people are applying for, and at the end
Mm,
of the day, communities all across Michigan, all across the nation are also trying to diversify their departments. So the um, limited candidates to start with, and then if there's any candidates within that pool that fit the diversity that the communities are looking for, it's even more competitive. But we live in a world now that we ask our police officers to do so many different things. I mean, we talked about mental health earlier, and I remember that we trained our fire or police officers and firefighters before on sexual harassment, and then we trained them on you know diversity, and now we're training them on mental health, and now we're training some of our folks to train the rest of our folks on how to interact with those with autism, and the list goes on and on. And our officers are up for it, but it's changing and it's demanding, and the pay and the pension and the benefits and stuff aren't quite what they were before, and the expectation levels and the zero tolerance level there is now for making a mistake. So it's really tough. We've I think in Western Wayne County where we're at, I think we've been a leader. We've created a transparency page on our website now that breaks down all of our citation arrests by gender and ethnicity and age and what they were for. And that's updated twice daily. And we have that out there. And there were people that didn't feel comfortable with that. But I wanted people to understand is that if you see something, anything we need to do better at, we want you to tell us because it's easy for us to think we're doing a good job, but if the public doesn't agree with us, we need to know that. So, we have body cameras on our officers now, and we're working to bring in a social worker through a contract to work with us. We've just hired a domestic violence advocate to work with our force. We're talking and now with the city council about creating a citizens advisory board. So policing is changing, and we're changing with it. We're trying to be a leader in that space, and it all comes down to your police chief. And we have a great police chief that totally understands what we're trying to do, and he wants to be a leader in it. And one of the things I've learned, Richard, is that on issues like this, if we're committed to it, there cannot be any space between the mayor and the police chief on this. They have to be 100% tied on, together, so that when there is an issue, we move through it together and keep the progress being made.
Well, I think that last point is so accurate. We spoke with Sheriff Jerry Clayton on one of our earlier episodes, and he spoke about the split between um, the police chief and the mayor in the city of Seattle that led to her resigning as police chief. And then we have right down the road from you a great example of a mayor in Mayor Duggan of Detroit and Police Chief James Craig, I think doing an exemplary job during a very challenging time. And I'm really pleased all the things that you've just so matter of factly mentioned. You're giving your citizens data about the interactions with police, bringing in the social worker, the level of training. There's a lot of good things happening, and it really stands in sharp contrast to a lot of the yelling that we see on you know various cable and broadcast news channels, and of course from those that we've elected and sent to Washington, and it may be a little bit to Lansing. So I hope that mayors around the country are doing what you're doing, and I hope people listening to this broadcast will understand that things can and are getting done on a local level. But Bill, look, it takes resources, and you mentioned pension, and I know I've spoken with other mayors, and they say, look, we would love to fund the recreation department more. We'd like to do more about the streets, but so much of our budget is really pre-spent on pension obligations. Um, can you tell us, like, what is Westland facing in terms of those kind of budget pressures? And if you know, what might other mayors around the country be dealing with in terms of having the resources to execute as you've been doing?
That's the really difficult part, because I think in local government we've been working in a space of scarcity for a long time, and with the expectations that we're going to cut our way to prosperity. These pension costs. When I came in Westland, when I came in, we're almost a 50-year-old city. When I came in, we had more retirees than we had active workers, and in my first term, I had to spend a lot of time coming out of the recession working on, just dealing with less revenue to keep services going. My second term, I spent a lot of time working on our city assets. Then my third term, my focus was on our unfunded legacy costs, which were our pension plans, and we call it OPEB, which is our retirement health care. So while resources, we were able to be in a better financial place where we could start making additional payments into the pension plan, but I just really couldn't make any headway on it. We had two pension plans. One is for my general employees, and up until recently, we were at 40% funded. And we also have a police and fire millage. We have a police and fire pension. Back when we created our city, they put a millage in place to fund that, and that's currently somewhere between 70 and 80%. But there's a dedicated millage, so that fund is in good shape. The other one, that 40% one, was the one that we've been trying to figure out how can we make some headway on it. We've seen communities around us that could not make the required annual payments, and the pension plans would get court orders to just take those payments and put it on the tax bills, and we didn't want to do that. So what we did is we actually during COVID we took advantage of the low interest rates, and Westland doesn't have a lot of long term debt. So we sat down with our bond people, and we actually were able to bond out our pension obligation. We did a 20-year bond. We our interest rate on this, you'll like this, Richard. We did it 2.39%
Nice.
for the next 20 years,
Nice.
which will take us to 95% funded in 20 years. My annual payments on this pension plan are actually less than what my pay as you go number was previous to this. So over the course of this 20-year bond, I'm going to save close to $80 million in cash flow. So
Wow.
that was something that we did. It requires that you have to have the blessing from in Michigan from the Treasury Department. We had a strong bond rating. We had very little long-term debt, and we were able to put that together. And we also recently just refinanced a bond that we used to build our new city hall in Westland. And when I floated that bond, it was actually the day it hit the market was the day after the city of Detroit declared bankruptcy,
Oh no.
and nobody was buying municipal bonds that day. So we locked in a deal, but my interest rate was in the high fives. We had 13 years left on that. We refinanced that a couple weeks ago for the remaining. I think it was 12 years at 2%. So we saved a couple $1 million in the debt load there too. So I guess you have to be creative. If your mindset is that, well, we don't have any money, we can't do anything, it's not going to get you out of that hole. So and the other side too is that we quit digging the hole. So we made that pension plan that I've talked about. It's closed now, so we're not going to be digging that hole deeper as we move forward. And so it's a lot of work. I guess it takes time for you to understand the job. The thing I'm just talking about, I wasn't able to accomplish until my third term. So I think you have to feel comfortable with yourself. You have to understand, how the job works, and but it's worked out well for us, and uh, our residents don't react to that. If I say we're going to build a new dog park, everybody goes crazy and they want to have a party. When we say we refinance that bond debt, sometimes we have to pat ourselves on the back because no one really understands what we just did.
Well, what I love about your discussion on this is you've been through, the Great Recession, and you managed your city through it. We run into a pandemic. You have the experience. Okay, what did we learn last time? And I don't want to get into the weeds, but when I kind of look at people talking about term limits, I'm thinking, you know what? We're giving up a lot of that institutional knowledge. And, if, voters want to return, a senator or a congressional representative, a mayor to the office because they like the job they're doing, then that's, to me, that's fine. That's the term limit. The ultimate term limit is what happens at the ballot box. And this level of competence in managing the public sector is something that most people aren't aware of. And, they all want to say that they want to challenge City Hall or the state capitol or the federal government in a legal way. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about the nutcases trying to invade the places or anything like that. Um, so, Bill, you mentioned that you came out of the Great Recession, and now we're coming out of the um, stay-at-home orders and the business shutdown orders that really locked down Michigan society very, very violently. And now we're coming out. What's going on with the business community and with economic development? And I know there's labor issues, and also you've done a great job at repurposing some of your buildings and such. Um, so what does it look like right now on the economic front?
Well, we are starting to see our businesses start back up, and our restaurants, for the most part, most of them survived through the pandemic. I mean, we although we lost some national chains that surprised me. I thought that they would have the wherewithal to pull through. Right now, it's all about trying to get employees. No matter which business owner in town I talk to, they just can't hire people, and they're not in a position to fire bad employees either because they can't. They got to have people, and some of our restaurants are going to remain at 50% capacity because that's all that they can serve at this point. So we're going to do everything we can. Westland received a couple $1 million of the federal CARES Act dollars. Westland's they call us an entitlement city, which means we're over 50,000, and so we get a direct allocation from HUD annually. But this was money that came through the CARES Act. We use that money to keep people in their homes and help them with their mortgage payments. We helped keep people off the streets, but we took a big portion of that money and we did micro grants for our local businesses, and why we weren't able to compete with the federal government with PPP, but we actually helped. We put money in probably about 80 different businesses. And some people it just helped them keep the lights on, helped them make payroll for a couple more weeks. So one of the things that I talked about my different terms. I'm up for election this year, Richard, and if I'm successful, my fourth term is going to be totally different than any other term I've had because Westland was just allocated $26 million from the American Recovery Plan. So for the first time that I've been in office, we're going to be talking about investing money as opposed to trying to cut our way to prosperity. So we're looking at how we can use that money to certainly number one is to continue fighting the pandemic. It is going to give us the opportunity to replace uh, unrealized revenue over the next couple years. But the third part, and the part that myself and probably mayors all across the country are so excited about, is using those funds to build a foundation for a stronger economic recovery. And so we're gonna take our time. We have until 2024 to allocate the dollars, 2026 to spend them. Is I'm going to try to figure out what type of transformational investments can we do in our community to help us, not only get past the pandemic, but actually to build a stronger future. And I know I don't have to tell you, but Westland was named after a regional shopping mall, and
Yeah.
regional shopping malls are dinosaurs in today's environment. So we've got a lot of work to do in Westland to diversify away from retail, and we're going to try to use some of these funds to help us accomplish that.
And I know that you want your citizens to get back to work, and I know there's sometimes some disincentives, and I'm hoping we'll get a clever government solution to, allowing people to keep the bolus that perhaps they got during the pandemic, but also to get back to work so that businesses do have employees, and there's a benefit in work, and we saw some of the despair when the people were paid for not working back in some of the automotive contracts. So giving people gainful employment where they can support their families is really the end game, and I hope that at the local level and perhaps was supported by the state, that we can get there. um, Bill, what about things like on the infrastructure front and roads, bridges, and particularly access to broadband? That one of the things that I think we've all observed during the pandemic is that there were those that could get on the net and work, or perhaps interact with their families and shop and such, and then there were those that were isolated because they didn't have good broadband. What's going on in the city of Westland, and what's going on with other municipalities in terms of infrastructure?
Well, infrastructure is, why we've made progress on our unfunded liabilities on pension and retirement health care. We have an equally unfunded liability with the city's infrastructure. So we're going to continue to try to invest in it as we go. I'm watching almost daily as at the national level as they're trying to, you know, see if they can agree on an infrastructure bill. One of the things that worries me about the national infrastructure bills are, as mayors, I think of infrastructure as the things that you can see, the roads and the bridges, and I can see the potholes. And at the national level, infrastructure gets a little more uh, broad as you start to bring on ports and tunnels and transit and some of the other uh, new infrastructure things that are being introduced in the conversation. I'll leave it at that. But um, broadband is something that is important, and it's not as in a city like Westland, which is pretty developed. We're a bedroom community. We're serviced by, three different broadband um, companies, and a fourth one is putting wire in the ground as we speak. But when I put on my hat as Michigan Municipal League president, I can tell you that all across Michigan is that communities aren't as fortunate as Westland. There's when you get into the middle of the state and you get over towards the west side and even in the UP, there aren't private carriers because there just aren't enough customers
Yeah.
to justify the infrastructure there. So I know that that's something that is a country, if we're going to compete with China at the national level, we're going to have to solve that problem. And using this federal money, this infrastructure is almost that once in a generation time to actually to do that. So I know I had a conversation with the governor on this, and one of the things that she told me was that she had no idea how important broadband was to farmers, and it was a lot of different reasons for that. But they're in that part of the state that doesn't have the infrastructure that we take for granted, maybe in Southeast Michigan. But as we try to, in the city of Detroit, one of Mayor Duggan's big issues, he's trying to, to solve intergenerational poverty, and access to broadband is one of the ways that he's committed to doing it, and it's something that's needed and wanted, and so I think with this new federal money coming down on infrastructure, the more that we can keep it towards traditional infrastructure and broadband, I think that the better we'll be as a nation.
Look, I'm in strong agreement. And, generation earlier, we decided that we should have telephone service. So there was a, basic universal telephone service for everybody. Prior to that, we had rural electrification. And I think broadband is there. And that plays right over to education. And you've got a developing workforce there with education. You've got several school systems that service Westland, and I believe some private schools. From the mayor's seat, and to the extent that you can speak about what the mayors around the country are thinking about, what's on your mind for education, and what kind of things can we expect to move forward on?
Some mayors have control over their school districts, and but most of them don't. But when I talk with mayors at the national level, one of the things that they're trying to do is bridge that gap between skilled trades and that workforce that just isn't there. And we're seeing a disparity where students that are going to college are coming out of college with high debt loads, and but there's still this other group of students that there's this opportunity there. So I think that all across the country, you're hearing mayors talk more about stepping in and trying to create those relationships and connect, the skilled trades opportunity and manufacturing and even building trades and plumbing and heating and cooling, and there's just a lot of opportunity. I'm super excited about the city of Westland's opportunity to work with the Wayne Westland School District. They have a career technical center that, in my humble opinion, has always been underutilized. The new superintendent, this is his it's his sweet spot. So I think that there's going to be a great opportunity locally here for me to work with the school district to try to create these different pathways for our students in the Wayne Westland area. help out the local manufacturers. I mean, we depend on Ford, GM, and Chrysler still in this area, and they can't get skilled trades either. And all across America right now, there's a housing boom, and they can't get skilled tradesmen. So there's a great opportunity. Um, Earlier in my term, I think a lot of people, they tell you in politics is, if you don't control the schools, don't get too close because you'll get burned. But I've learned now that um, we talked about the relationship between the police chief and the mayor earlier. I think it's just as equally important to have that same relationship between the mayor and the superintendent of the school districts, because really we're all in it together. The schools feed the city feeds the schools. So I'm excited about the next couple of years working with our local superintendent on that issue.
Yeah, and my passion for education to give all these kids a chance. They all need to have foundational skills, reading comprehension, mathematics, physics, sciences, because the industries they're going to work in haven't been invented yet, much less the companies, much less the jobs themselves, and the critical shortage of skilled labor. And folks can make a really good living if they know how to deal with heating and cooling systems, if they know how to do plumbing, electrical work, carpentry, and that leads us to some of the pressures we're seeing now on housing and housing affordability. Uh, does much of that transcend to the local level about making sure the housing stock is good?
Absolutely. The property values. At the end of the day, I know in my heart that it, people in Westland, they want their trash picked up in the streetlights to work. But at the end of the day, they want their property values to go up. They want to protect them. In a lot of cases, that's a homeowner's biggest investment. And the schools are, I know I don't have to tell you this. Realtors, they want to go where there's good schools,
Yes.
and it's good for property values, and it creates community wealth, and so it goes hand in hand. Sometimes it amazes me how easily that is forgotten, and that those bridges go in different directions, but it goes hand in hand. In Westland, Richard, one of my biggest challenges is Westland started off as a bedroom community, which means there were just lots of rooftops. And back when Detroit was the main metro, they built suburbs for the workers of Detroit to live in. When Detroit suffered, they recreated all the things in the Detroit area back in the suburbs. Shopping and dining and entertainment all came to the suburbs, and we built communities around it. But now that Detroit is coming back and it's coming back fast, people are going to go to Detroit for those options. So a city like Westland, we have to get back in the bedroom community business, and what that means is we have to be a great place to live. We have to have great schools, and we have to have good, strong infrastructure, parks and recreation, public safety. So that's going to be our focus moving forward. Is really trying to create that place you want to live, work, and play. And the biggest part of that is you have to have the school districts to support that.
Yeah, that's a great view, and Detroit was doing so well pre-pandemic. Um, a lot of credit, I guess, to Dan Gilbert and what he did aggressively, Roger Penske, and then Mike Duggan knows how to run a government, and he gets stuff done. He's just a very practical guy, and they got public safety. They're still challenged on the school system, of course. Um, Bill, this has been a really good um, conversation, and I'm just wondering what didn't we talk about that perhaps we should be discussing? Things that are maybe on your mind.
We've covered a lot of ground, which I appreciate. You know, I guess maybe one of the things that I've been spending some time on lately is that I've become one of the more tenured mayors in our area, and so I've been spending a lot of time with some of the newer mayors in our surrounding communities, and trying to share some of the things I've learned over my time. At the national level, at the Conference of Mayors, I remember going to those meetings and I felt like I was in mayor's college. I was just
Hmm.
soaking it all up, learning so much. Now when I go to those conferences, I'm proud because now I'm a presenter and I'm sharing the things that we've done. So I think that in local government is that we talked about earlier is when we lose that institutional knowledge. It's happening everywhere, and being in public life now is tough. It's tough on the individual, but it's tough on your family. And social media is just it's turned into a place to really be cruel sometimes to public officials. So we're losing a lot of good public officials, and our city councils are changing. And when you lose institutional knowledge at the city council level, that affects local government just as much. And we're having a hard time hiring at this level. With department heads, we're competing. The private sector can outpay us now on for talent, and a lot of the knowledge that our department heads learn at the local level, it translates well into the private sector. So our challenges don't stop, but at the end of the day, I feel real good about where our community is, where we're going, and we're certainly not perfect, but we know that if we do make mistakes, we make it right, and then we get right back on the track and keep moving forward. So, I feel real good about where we're at. I'm real excited about this opportunity with the federal money coming in, and I know that a lot of people, maybe on one side of the table didn't really like the money going to the local governments. They thought it was a buyout or a payoff. But I can tell you at the local level, we've endured a lot, and we've been through, you know, population decline here in Michigan. Some mayors are dealing with, once in a lifetime flooding. We have infrastructure issues, epidemics. We haven't talked about opioids. That's a major problem in every community. And with the pandemic, I mean, the challenges are real. And so with this federal money coming in, I think that mayors are going to really try to utilize that money. And almost every conversation I'm part of, I keep hearing the word transformational. So I think everybody's going to be challenging each other to try to utilize these funds a little bit better than the next mayor. So it should be an exciting time for local governments and communities over the next couple of years.
Exciting and challenging. And of course, as you touched on, the misinformation and disinformation, that's the peril of social media. Of course, the promise of social media is that, some of the collaboration that you talked about, that I know that in my growing up, there was kind of a unified front with the school systems and the local governments and the police departments, the courts, and the like, and you kind of did the right thing by people. It wasn't this agency's problem or that government's problem. It was like, look, where can we lean in to meet the challenges of the day? And I just have a sense that you're working tirelessly to get us there. Uh, Mayor Wild, you've been very, very generous with your time today and really grateful for this. I know that our listeners are going to enjoy this education and this perspective. Um, any closing thoughts that you've got for the listeners and the viewers of the Common Bridge today?
Uh, well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on today, and I appreciate the work that you do, Richard. And I would just say that local government is in mayors, that they're pragmatic by nature, and I think that they're getting things done. I'm excited that the mayors have been at the table with the current administration. Whether you support them or you don't, I can tell you, as mayors, we've been at the table for the American Recovery Act, and Treasury is meeting with us to try to utilize these funds. And so for the first time in a long time, mayors are actually at the table. And you mentioned that, Mayor Duggan, he gets things done. And I see that all across the country with mayors, that if there's a problem, if you connect the mayor, that you can, that's how you can get solutions. And sometimes I'm criticized a little bit that I've got too many hats on, but what I tell people is that look at all those tables that the city of Westland is at the table at now. We were never at the tables, the regional and state and national level that we are now. So, and by being at the table, we're learning more. We're bringing resources back. We're making relationships that are just you know so helpful in so many different ways. A city like Westland and a lot of communities, they can't survive on an island by themselves. It really comes down to relationships. So um, I'm excited about our future. Got a few more gray hairs than when we first met, but I hope that I earned them. So
Well, my genetics are keeping them down low on my side, but that's just pure genetics. Well, you've earned every one of them. We've been talking today with the mayor of Westland, Michigan, William Bill Wild, giving us a great view of what's happening at the municipal level. Please consider subscribing to Richard Helppie's Common Bridge on your favorite podcast channel: Apple, Amazon, Buzzsprout, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Follow us on YouTube. Rate us. Please rate us high if you would. And of course, subscribe for free at richardhelppie.com. You can register there. You'll also find Mayor's bio on the website, as well as access to past episodes of The Common Bridge. And so for today, this is Rich Helppie signing off on The Common Bridge.
Thank you for watching Richard Helppie's Common Bridge. Please click the subscribe button below. Also, tune into our podcast, Richard Helppie's Common Bridge, on Apple, iHeart, Amazon, and others. Also, be sure to visit us online at richardhelppie.com.